The first item of business today is the appointment of chairman. Can we confirm the appointment of Peter Ishwood as chairman of the Western Area Planning Committee, please? Thank you. Councillor Ishwood couldn't make it this evening, so if we can move on to item 2, the appointment of vice chairman. Can we confirm that Councillor Carol Coburn be appointed as the vice chairman, please? Thank you.
Right, good evening, councillors and members of the public. Before we commence the meeting, can I draw your attention to the fire regulations which are on the screen behind me? We meet at this time in the Waitrose car park, and can I also ask you to ensure, please, that all your mobile phones are on silent? And could I also remind the members of the public that this is a meeting that's held in public. It's not a public meeting, and therefore, please, can we ask you to refrain from interrupting the proceedings? So, on to the main items of business. Item 3, the minutes of the meeting which took place on the 15th of April have been laid on the table for the last 30 minutes. Are you content that I sign these as a correct record of the meeting at the end? I'll do so at the end. Apologies for absence, Emma. Do we have any?
We have apologies from Councillor Peter Ishwood. Thank you.
Please could I also add Councillor Jill Hargreaves, who broke down somewhere in the middle of Wiltshire and was hoping to make it, but obviously hasn't. Moving on to item 5, declarations of interest. Have members declared any interest before the meeting, Emma?
None before the meeting.
Do members have other non-pecuniary or disclosable? Councillor Frost?
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I'd like to disclose the fact that I'm a Farnham Town Councillor. They have a planning group that considers all planning applications. I'm not a member of that planning group and have not been involved in any decisions on matters that have been before them. That's it, really.
Thank you, Councillor Frost. Councillor Potts, I don't really want to go through exactly the same. Is it exactly the same one?
Madam Chairman, could we
just
take
do
it
that
as
for
a
the whole of
one for
Farnham Town
all
Council?
respective members? Thank you.
Any other declarations other than the fact that you're a member of Farnham Town Council? On then to questions from members of the public. Have there been any questions, Emma?
None received, Chairman.
And item 7, do we have any relevant updates to government guidance or legislation, Elizabeth?
Thank you, Chairman. There's none to update you on at this meeting. Members will recall at the April meeting gave quite an extensive update of the changes that came into force from April, and I've subsequently sent members a summary sheet, including all new members, in respect of those changes. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure I've seen that, Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that the Brandon Lewis letter, that the guidance given in that was included.
Elizabeth, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Is that the letter on landscape protection that was sent to the Planning Inspectorate? Thank you, Chairman. We didn't include it because it wasn't actually, as such, a change to guidance or legislation to planning authorities, but certainly we're aware of that letter because it was being directed at planning inspectors as such. But nevertheless, the government's emphasis on protection of the landscape, which of course is in the NPPF and also within the NPPG, is obviously very much in our minds, and we do take that into account in all our reports where relevant, and you'll see there is reference to landscape protection in several of your reports this evening. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Councillor Williamson, I'm not going to let you come back on this one. I'm sorry, it's a very long agenda. If you wish to discuss this outside the meeting with Elizabeth, then please do so. Can we move on to item 8, please, the Thames Basin Heath Special Protection Area? Again, Elizabeth, would you like to add anything to the table that's printed in your agenda?
There's nothing to add. Thank you, Chairman. The report is for noting. Thank you.
Councillor Fraser, you wish to speak to the Sangs?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. You may recall that my interjection at the annual council meeting last week, I wish to establish the origin of the figures in agenda item 8 And I query Councillor Adams' reference to them in his response to a question posed by...
I'm sorry, Councillor Fraser. By all means, address a question relating to the tables that Elizabeth was presented to you to Elizabeth. I'm not going to go back over council business at this meeting.
How can councillors obtain the evidence and confirm the figures that were referred to? The intention of agenda item 8 is to demonstrate that Farnham Park retains SANG capacity for a further planning consents. We know that the mitigation calculations depend upon the assumption that SANGs do actually work. I am not convinced.
Excuse me, I'm going to stop you again. Whether or not SANG's work is not relevant to this report at the moment. Again, take it up with the officers outside the meeting. Do you have something that's relevant to the table on the meeting that we can ask the officers to clarify?
Yes, I
That's
do.
what this point is for.
Natural England is not convinced either, and I must conclude that because...
Sorry, Councillor Fraser, I'm just going to have to stop you here. We have a very long agenda. You have an item that you want to discuss, which is SANGs, and I can understand your doubt about whether SANGs work or not, but this is not the meeting to discuss them.
Madam Chair, this is a very relevant meeting to discuss them.
Excuse me, I am chairing this meeting, and I'm telling you now that if you wish to discuss that further with the officers, you do so outside the meeting. They're always available. We have a very long agenda and we need to get on. Have you anything to ask Elizabeth directly relevant to the tables and the information that she's presented?
The validity of the figures in the tables. I'm told that the last increase in Farnham Park SANG was 6.9 hectares in 2013, and that was devised following improvements to the car parking provision on a highway cul-de-sac at Six Mills Roundabout, which is 500 metres from Farnham Park. Curbside parking...
I'm sorry, this is totally irrelevant to this. Will you take this up outside the meeting? I'm not having any more on this. I'm sorry, Councillor Fraser. You just have to take this outside the meeting with somebody else. Does anybody have any questions to Elizabeth about the information there? Not a rant themselves, please. A question about the information to Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman. The information about the SANGs and the details of the SANGs and the effect of the on the SPA is absolutely critical to every decision that we will take tonight. It is, in my opinion, unlawful that we're being asked to make a decision.
Right, excuse me, I'm going to ask the rest of the members. I, as the chairman of this, can ask the committee sitting here if you wish to pursue this. And if there isn't a majority of people who wish to pursue it, we'll pursue it. If the majority of people wish that member to stop raising this issue inside this meeting when we have a very long agenda, then I suggest they show their support or not. Those in favour, please, of stopping this debate with Councillor Williamson and Councillor Fraser on SANGs and the efficacy of SANGs, will you please show? And those who feel that Councillor Fraser and Councillor Williamson should prolong this debate on SANGs at this particular moment, will you please show? In that case, we'll move on.
Chairman, could I please propose a motion then?
I'm afraid that's the end of that on section 8. So on section 9, we'll certainly do it.
Chairman, I sought advice before this meeting to see whether I could raise a motion, and I was told I could.
Well, try your motion, and then we'll see if it's applicable.
Okay. As I said, I believe that we're being asked to act in an unlawful manner in making decisions on some of these proposals. And to cover ourselves, I'd like to propose a motion that we defer any decisions pending the production of an appropriate assessment demanded by law on those proposals which are impacted by the Thames Basin and the Wealden Heath considerations.
Right, I've taken advice from the officer who is instructing me tonight, and I have got support for the fact that we will not discuss this any further, so I'm afraid I'm not going to take that motion, Councillor Williamson. That's not to say I don't think the issue is worth discussing. I'm just not prepared to discuss it further in this particular meeting. If you have anything you wish to add to that, then the officers are always available for you to raise that, and there's plenty of other places for you to raise a motion. Can we move on, please, now? No, I'm moving on now. We've had enough on that one, thank you. To item 9, the Quarterly Appeals Report. This was deferred, if you remember, from last time because we had a very long agenda. We have a very long agenda tonight. Can we focus, please, on the issues that need determination?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll keep the presentation short. You'll see there were 4 decisions for the quarter, of which 3 decisions were dismissed and 1 was allowed. The information is before you and to be noted. I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have on any of the decisions before you tonight. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions on the Quarterly Appeals Report? I noticed I didn't actually ask you to note the update of item 8, so can we note that update as well? And the Quarterly Appeals Report. They both noted. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, the Quarterly Enforcement Report, and I'll ask Beth, please, if she would present this one for us.
Thank you, Chairman. I will similarly be as quick as possible, save a few additional updates. If I just take you straight to page 17, this report focuses on performance for the quarter January to March of this year. Page 17 gives you the Western area, this beginning of the Western area updates. Land north of River Lane. We are aware of further developments on this site. At this stage, these developments are confidential. I'm happy to take questions offline, but I can't discuss them in this forum. Puddlewood, at last we have a decision. Our notice was upheld and the appeal was dismissed. So this particular case will be removed from the report next round. Just then to draw your attention, on page 19, table 1, you'll note that whilst we have seen an increase of about 8% of cases on hand, there was a 30% increase in cases received. So, I mean, all in all, it's balancing out. We are maintaining performance in the face of increased complaints, which is borne out on page 20 at table 3, where you'll see that our performance against our local performance indicator is at its highest, certainly in the last year or so, but I think actually in many years as well. Finally, page 22, under section 3, appeals lodged and appeal performance. Draw your attention to an appeal in the Western area relating to the Royal Arms Public House. This was a real test the water case, but eventually we argued that an inflatable slide amounted to development that could be controlled under planning legislation. An inspector agreed with us and we won that appeal with this slide to be removed. There have been 3 notices, enforcement notices served within the quarter as well, which are detailed before you. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Frost, you indicated.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Could I go back to Puddlewood, please, as it's in my ward? I'm delighted we've got some kind of reaction here and that it's all been dismissed. Does this mean that the site is going to be cleared completely and utterly, or are there any more buildings that have appeared which are going to then force us into another enforcement action and going through the same procedure that we've done for the last 3 years?
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly the appeal requires the removal of the wooden buildings, the aviaries, the outbuildings. There have been 1 or 2 changes in recent weeks on this site, and discussions are being held as to how to progress with this site in the long term. Without saying too much, I mean, we are keen that further breaches don't arise and further officer time isn't spent, so much time isn't spent on this rather resource-intensive site. But yes, we are having discussions in terms of how best to go about controlling it in future. Thank you, Chairman.
May I just come back? Thank you very much indeed for that. Can you keep me informed as to what action is being taken? Thank you.
Councillor Potts.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just really wanted to comment on the appeal relating to the Royal Arms Public House and the inflatable saga that went on for quite a long time there. I know I was dealing with that for quite a long period of time with the former councillor while he was away, and obviously there was a lot of concern by it from neighbours because it wasn't just your average inflatable. It was a very unusual case, but I think on behalf of all the neighbours who've sort of contacted me and spoken to me since as well, thank you for everything that the team did there. I would like that on record because we were looking at sort of new case law and taking that forward with your team and the legal team involved. So it's a good result, and I'm very pleased to see that. So let's just hope that they now comply with that notice. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to draw notice to notice number 3 at the land at the rear of Lambswood, and just to highlight that there is a very recent felling licence application on that, which I'm sure you're probably aware of. And can I just urge that we do liaise closely with the tree preservation team, bearing in mind that there is enforcement on that site. Whilst I'm not against control of woodland with items such as felling licences, I think it would be appropriate at this stage to make sure that we are liaising very closely with that team. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do members have any other questions or comments on that report? In that case, it's the recommendation is set out on the first page of your agenda, and again, it's to note. Is that enforcement noted? Applications for planning permission. Oh, sorry, Beth. Yes, I'm sure nobody will mind if you slip out delicately. In the event of any site inspections being necessary as a result of consideration of applications at this meeting, these will be held on the 7th of July. So let's move on to the first of our many planning applications tonight. Item A1, WA 2014-2280. Item 1, WA, said that, for the erection of 2 dwellings with access onto Alma Lane, following demolition of the existing garage at land to the rear of 97 and 95 Farnborough Road in Farnham. Paul, you're going to take us through this.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this was subject to a recent site visit. So it was presented last time. I'll just go through the scheme briefly once again, perhaps for the benefit of the new members on the committee. You'll see that since the previous deferral, the applicants have lodged an appeal on the grounds of non-determination. So, as noted on page 26, we're still looking for the views of the committee to inform the council's case at the appeal. You'll see that the scheme is located towards the lower end of Alma Lane at junction with Farnborough Road. This was the total site before, 95 and 97. But this is the site for consideration of councillors this evening, which comprises a vacant car park and some of the land that was in the rear of number 95. There's a bit of background, as set out in the report, that number 95 had a lawful use as offices. That had recently been granted a prior notification approval for two flats. The unit number 97 was retail with a flat above. Again, that had a prior notification for conversion to flats. Perhaps a couple of years ago. So this is the site before members this evening. The proposal is for the erection of a pair of 3-bedroomed houses positioned slightly forward on the site of 97 and the dwellings to the west of the site. The parking arrangements are 2 access points with an area for turning on both sides of each plot. Just to note the dimensions on site, the building itself is set around about 5 metres back from the highway and slightly further from the actual road itself. The rear gardens are about 7 metres and about 7.5 metres deep here. Accommodation is on 3 floors with a single bedroom in the second floor roof area. The elevational forms, this is the rear elevation and this is the frontage to the Elmer Lane. You see the next slide that in terms of street scene, there are different levels in the vicinity of the site. You see that the building, which will be slightly below the property to the right hand side, and you'll see there's a slight step down in the roof levels between the buildings, and this is a sort of space that will be maintained between the buildings. For members that weren't at this site visit, this is the site in question here. I meant the existing car park with the additional land to the rear. This is one of the buildings that has recently is in the process of being converted into flats. The ground floor previously had been in retail use. There's the properties opposite the site. That's a view of the property adjacent to the left-hand side. That's a view to the property from within the site to number 93 beyond. See, the levels are such that they're slightly higher at this point here, and they have a conservatory on the back here. The levels do rise in this direction here, so the building would sit more or less in this position here, that's 7 metres back, 7.5 from this boundary wall here. That's another view of property to the right-hand side of the site. Again, you can see the drop in levels between that property and the site itself. Again, this is a picture along the rear boundary to show the difference in levels between the rear and the western side. The key determining issues are set out on the slide. One is the principle of development. It is within the developed area, and members will note there is a need for additional housing within the borough. One of the key issues for residents has been parking and highway safety, and also the effect upon the SPA. Other key issues would relate to design and visual impact, and particularly the street scene, impact on residential amenity, and we've identified the key neighbours that may be affected by the proposal within the report, and also issues of amenity space provision. There are no updates to the report. Therefore, the officer's recommendation is as set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. This application is subject to public speaking, and I understand that you all know the procedure. We'll explain it again if you've forgotten. Is Mr. Weston here? He's the first speaker. No, he didn't. So Mr. Weston was supposed to be our first speaker. Is Miss Skinner here, Lisa Skinner? Right, can I ask you to come? And you are in support of this application. The 3 minutes doesn't start until you press the button.
Thank you for allowing me to address the committee. My name is Lisa Skinner and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. My client purchased this site last summer, had pre-application discussions with the council and submitted this application on the 4th of December. The application site comprises predominantly the former car park to the retail unit at 97 Farnborough Road that has now been converted to residential use. Each of the proposed dwellings would be provided with 2 parking spaces and turning in the front garden. The new dwellings therefore provide their own parking and would not exacerbate the existing parking problems in the area. The County Highway Authority has confirmed this meets their standards. In addition, the proposal would represent an improvement in the area with an overall reduction in the number of traffic movements and delivery that would have been associated with the previous retail use. Following the initial neighbour objections to the proposal, we have made amendments to the application. Whilst 3 letters have been received regarding the revised drawings, the neighbours have recognised that a number of their concerns have been addressed. Furthermore, we do not intend to carry out any work to the existing retaining walls, and a full survey with sections, finished floor levels and ridge heights have already been provided to the Council. The dwellings have been well designed, and we believe the proposal would significantly improve the appearance of the area. They would be constructed on brownfield land, assist in meeting the Council's housing requirements and protect greenfield sites. We have lodged an appeal on the grounds of non-determination, as a decision should have been made on the application by the end of January. If members agree with the officer's recommendation that permission should be granted, we would be prepared to resubmit the application to the Council and, following a favourable decision, withdraw the current appeal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And still no Mr Weston, in which case we'll move over to you, members. Relief. Councillor Fraser.
Sorry, me again. The traffic situation is such that when the second car is parked in the front garden, it cannot turn and will have to reverse onto the road. The site, in my opinion, is overdeveloped. There is a grave loss of privacy to the neighbours in overlooking, and by my measure, the border of the SPA on the edge of the Army land is only 240 metres to the north. I would object. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Councillor Hodge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too have grave concerns about the parking arrangements at this property. I don't believe a 5 metre setback with a narrow side to the house will actually provide sufficient space for a turning circle, which means cars will have to reverse out onto a very busy road. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hodge. I've got Councillor Potts next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was one of the members that moved to defer this for a site visit. And one of those reasons was the cumulative effect of all the work that's going on that site, which gives me grave concern. Now, I know that that has been got around by submitting different applications, so the only one we can determine tonight is this particular one that's before us. And it's very disappointing that there was no way that there was any room for negotiations in terms of further discussions with the developer. So we are where we are. But save us to say, both Councillor Hodge and Councillor Fraser have summarised very clearly the two real concerns with this site. I understand that the county highways have reported that they sort of don't have a serious issue with the road, but anyone who knows that road and has the local knowledge will know that what's going to happen is that a car's going to fly around the traffic lights. There's no way of enforcing how somebody comes out of their driveway. They're going to be backing out and we're going to have an accident, coupled with which at a number of times of the day, and probably not quite at the time that the site visit happened yesterday, you have large numbers of school children walking up and down that road and using that very same junction. I would also, with all due respect, dispute the comments made about deliveries. When it was a post office, it was a very quiet, shall we say, post office. And it had very few deliveries. It did have cars coming and going, but there were two entrances in and out of the car park, as again, residents and people with local knowledge will know. So to say that actually the traffic flow will be a lot less, I am afraid I would actually beg to differ on that. I think it's very clear I have grave concerns. I think it is overdevelopment of the site. I think if something were to come back, nobody's saying the site shouldn't be developed. It needs to be appropriate. I stressed that at the last meeting. I don't feel this design is appropriate for that site and where it is geographically located. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potts. Councillor Frost.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Well, this is déjà vu again, really, isn't it? Because we debated this at some length last time, and I certainly have not changed my views. I think this site has been overdeveloped. I don't think that it's right on the parking issue and the highways issue. And we have to remember that when highways comment that it is their advice we've got. We don't have to take it. But we would be silly to ignore it completely. However, I think it is overdevelopment. I don't like the design because they've got little rooms in the roof. And I don't think it is in the right location with all this toing and froing, and particularly, as Councillor Potts says, vehicles reversing out of this site at a very, very busy junction. So from my point of view, I will not be supporting the application.
Thank you, Councillor Frost. Do any other councillors wish to comment? Take Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would simply like to largely agree with the comments of Councillor Frost and Councillor Potts. Having visited the site, it did seem to me very much to be overdevelopment of the site. I'm certainly all in favour of brownfield development. It seems to me this would be a very appropriate site for one larger house rather than two smaller houses. The other comment I would make is if I was living in this location as designed, I think I would be trying to reverse into the site so I could drive out forward. And that, so near to a busy junction, would strike me as being a pretty dangerous manoeuvre. So I will not be supporting this application either. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor Lear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, this is another one of those applications that we've seen over the years where we do have problems with disagreement with what highways are saying to us. And I would just like to probably seek more guidance, because actually this is a very recent one come to my attention, and I just think it's wrong to have vehicles reversing out onto busy roads. I share some of the reasons for objection with the development, but I'm very aware it's developed area. So I'm actually pro-development on this site, but my real concern with this is road safety again, and we're seeing it time and time again where we differ in opinion to highways. So my appeal really is for how we approach highways about this, and actually make them very aware that time and time again this is happening. How can they feel that is safe when nobody else seems to agree with them? And that is my major concern with this. Thank you, Chairman.
Officers, is there any way we can put pressure on highways to see see the roads as we see them round here rather than as they see them, or do we just have to accept that we have to agree to differ?
Well, in this particular case, we did. So the application has taken some time to be determined, and it has actually been amended during the course of the application. And in this, we did note the concerns of the residents, and we did go back to highways, note the concerns. They have visited the site, and with the revised layout, with additional turning space, they did come back and they were satisfied that it addressed their concerns. So in this particular case, we did get them to look at it very carefully. They probably had regard also to the fact that it was a previous commercial use on the site and a car park with a number of traffic movements and vehicles. I suppose on that balance they came to the conclusion that it was acceptable. So we do go back and question them on schemes which do generate local concern.
I think all we can say is keep questioning. Does anybody else have any final comments or questions? Councillor, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, if I may come back on that. Is there any way that we can build just a statistical analysis of how the Western, Eastern and Southern planning committees actually do tend to differ with the advice and guidance from highways? Because then we may be able to demonstrate to them in due course that what they're saying isn't in keeping with those who actually live in the area. I think we need to be doing something, maybe a bit more than an individual application basis for the longer term, to try and make them aware that we just don't agree with them.
Right, sorry. I was going to say, could we leave that with the officers to think about rather than get an answer now? I've got Councillor Williamson next and then Councillor Frost.
Thanks very much, Chairman. I'd just like to check on the distance to the SPA. We did question it at the site meeting because I strolled across to the start and it didn't seem 400 metres. Has it been checked?
We have checked the location of the site relative to the SPA, and the site, according to our information and constraints, is outside of the 400 metre measurement, and therefore it's in the buffer zone, so that it is subject to the normal avoidance strategy and mitigation proposals.
Want to come back, Councillor Williamson?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, certainly to the trees, which look as though it's the beginning of the SPA. And I looked on Google Earth, and it all looks as though it's a lot less. But if that's what your chart says, that's what your chart says. But I would add that cats predate up to 1.5 kilometres.
I think we're well aware that not everything that we have to judge our applications by make 100% sense, and wherever you draw the line, and a 400 metre zone has been designated, and therefore at 401 you're outside it, and at 399 you're inside it. So I don't really want to prolong this too much. I'll let you come back one more, Councillor Williamson, and then...
Thank you very much, Chairman. I understand the 400 metres, and I understand the regulations. But the point I was trying to make on item 8 is the law is the law, and it's the law which we are measured against, and it's the law which makes our decisions.
I agree with you. We take the legal advice and hope that we are making legal decisions. Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Chairman. A belated declaration of interest, and that is that I'm a Surrey County Councillor and I have a lot to do with highways. Could I make a proposal to the officers, through you, Madam Chairman, and that is that I think it might be helpful, because sometimes I think TDC at Surrey County Council gets tarred with a brush which isn't perhaps right. And therefore I think it might be helpful if we had a training session and could perhaps get TDC from Surrey County Council to explain to members their thinking behind their decisions. We look at things sometimes in a cumulative way. They cannot. They have to look at individual applications. So, through you, Madam Chairman, it might be an idea to help us through this.
Yes, thank you. I think that's an excellent idea. I saw Matthew Evans nodding his head there. And I think it works two ways, because I've had officers, Surrey highway officers out to something they thought were acceptable that they discovered on the ground wasn't. So I think, it's a good two-way discussion to be had. So I'll leave that to Councillor, to Matthew Evans, who's nodding his head rigorously there. Does anybody else wish to make any comments, or can we move straight to the recommendation on this one? Okay, the recommendation is that, had it been within the power of the Council to determine the application, permission would have been granted, subject to conditions 1 to 13, which you'll find on pages 45 to 48 of your agenda, and informatives 1 to 6 on pages 49 to 50. The recommendation was to grant. Can I see all those, please, in favour of the recommendation to grant? No. I'm not surprised. In which case, please, could I have an alternative recommendation?
Those in favour.
Oh.
To refuse. Those refuse and abstain.
I still have to do that, do I? I have to ask how many... Yeah. Right. Could I see the numbers of all those refusing?
Okay, that's unanimous.
Do we ever get a different number? And is anybody abstaining this evening? Right. Okay, in that case, can I move on to my alternative recommendation? Yeah? Yeah. So please could I have an alternative recommendation and reasons, please? Councillor Frost.
I'll give some sort of bullet points and hope the officers can sort of wrap around them. Overdevelopment of the site, poor car parking, the inability to actually drive in without it. We believe it's dangerous, etc. If anybody can throw any other bits in. Oh, I'm sorry.
Councillor Hill, you wish to add something?
Well, I just wanted to mention the car parking again, because it does say on page 105 that there's a minimum of 2.5 spaces per dwelling is the council's guidelines. And I checked that they had the same number of bedrooms as the application on page 105, and it does.
Right, Councillor Hill, you completely baffled me there, but I'll just nod sagely. I don't know whether we can add something about accessing and egressing the site in forward gear, because I think this is really what we're trying to say. It's the forward gear business that we're worried about, the fact that everything is so tight on the site that it seems impossible to turn around and exit in forward gear. I don't know whether we can add a planning thing there. Any other councillors wish to add something? Right, officers, have we got anything that we can remotely come up with a...
So could I ask a question first of all? During the discussion, there was a concern also about impact on neighbours from some councillors. I wonder whether that was still...
Yes.
And if so, which particular neighbour and reasons that would relate to?
Councillors, which neighbours? Were we talking, particularly the one behind, the one on Farnborough Road itself, adjacent to the building, to the first house? Was that 93? We were certainly worried about that one. Councillor Fraser?
There was a representation by the neighbour to the north of the site whilst we were on our site visit, to the effect that there was overlooking and that she was concerned about the retaining wall, which of course we can't really do much about.
Thank you. She, of course, was much higher up. That was Topaz or whatever the house is, which is high. Any other reasons? Councillor Williamson?
Yes, I think that same lady was also very concerned about the fact that parking would have to take place on the adjoining streets, and that was an issue with all the neighbours.
I'm not liking what I'm hearing so far. Are we getting a complete picture here? Because it seems rather sort of limited.
Chairman, I think we can frame those into a suggested reason for refusal, which, if you're happy to, Paul will now read out. Would that be good?
So there were a couple of members indicated. Would you like to hear what Paul's got to say first and then see if we want to add something? Okay, thanks, Paul.
I think what we're looking for, there are two reasons for refusal. The first one is, would the proposal, by reason of the layout and number of dwellings proposed, would result in an overdevelopment of the site and a cramped form of development, which will be out of keeping with and detrimental to the character and appearance of the area. The proposed parking and turning arrangements are likely to lead to an increase in on-street and inappropriate parking in a restricted area. The proposal fails to accord with policies D1 and D4 of the local plan and the MPPF 2012. So that'll be the first. Hopefully that includes most points.
Councillor Potts, do you wish to add something?
No, I think that absolutely sums it up. It's very succinct and very clear, and we stick exactly to policies. I don't want us floundering around on various reasons that perhaps people mentioned on site visits and things. I think if we stick to those two key concerns, because those are legitimately the real concerns that we've all had. Thank you.
It was amazing how the officers make sense of our ramblings, isn't it? Councillor Lee, you wish to add something?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to follow up really on Councillor Hill's observation, because I don't know word verbatim the Council's parking guidelines 2013, but it seems to me that actually, and it's obviously location dependent. I can't see reference to that in that application of how many spaces there should be for a 3-bedroom house in that location. Maybe that will be an answer. Can I see it?
Sometimes it's not a question of how many spaces they have, it's whether you can access those spaces safely. And I think what's happening on this site is there are 2 spaces. It's just unfortunate that to get to one you have to go sort of through the other. So it's really the access and the turning circles. I'll just take Councillor Story because he was indicating.
Yes, Madam Chair. It was just to point out that at the bottom of page 38, it does say that recommendation is 2.5 parking spaces per house.
I think it was the word tight, which sort of stuck in our mind when we were on site, that the parking was tight. And I think that was sort of what I always think of as a sort of mummy word, where you don't want to use the proper word, you come up with something that's just a bit softer than what you really want to say. I think tight was a slight understatement for that one. Does anybody wish to add anything further to the recommendation, or shall we move to move it? Councillor Elliott?
I'll be very brief, Madam Chairman. Thank you. I think what I'm trying to say, not doing a very good job of it, is actually maybe, just maybe, that this, if it does have a minimum stipulation on spaces, maybe the design could be done a different way to actually make it work better. And that would be my observation. Thank you.
I think there's a second reason related to neighbours. The proposal, by reason of its proximity to the neighbouring property to the rear, number 93A, and overall height, bulk and mass and fenestration would result in an overbearing and intrusive development which would materially harm the amenities of that occupier, in conflict with policies D1 and D4 of the local plan, the SPD for residential extensions and the MPPF 2012.
Are we all quite happy with that alternative, those reasons? So could I then put the alternative recommendation, please, that the application is refused? Can I see all those? Oh, sorry.
Just to remind the committee, this is a recommendation that had it been within your power to determine the application, permission would have been refused. Thank you.
And of course, I'm actually asking you to approve the amended recommendation, not turn it down. So can I see all those in favour of the new recommendation, which is the recommendation? No, I'm not doing this. I am doing this.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've refused one.
Yeah, so
this is the proposed one.
Those in favour to refuse.
Right, those in favour to refuse?
That's unanimous, that's fine.
And do I have to ask who's in favour?
No.
Right. Right, we got there eventually. That was refused. And we'll move on to the next application, item A2, WA 2014-2387, the erection of 21 affordable dwellings following the demolition of existing buildings together with associated works at 40 Waden Lane and the staff car park opposite in Farnham. And it's Catherine who's going to introduce this to us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The application site comprises two portions of land. The land to the south of Waden Lane, which was formerly the Dairy Crest depot site, the larger of the two sites, and the adjacent site to the north of Waden Lane, which was the associated staff car park for the dairy site. The land in the surrounding area is predominantly residential, and it does rise up in a southerly direction from Waden Lane. The proposals are for the erection of 21 affordable housing units in total. I apologise for the quality of this plan, but there would be 12 two-storey dwellings comprising a mix of 2-bedroom and 4-bedroom properties. There would be a combination of terraces of 3 properties and some detached properties towards the top of the site here. On the adjacent car park site, there would be a 3-storey block of 9 flats. The houses would be available for shared ownership, and the flats would be available for affordable rent. I'll just quickly go through some of the proposed elevations for you. This is the first terrace of 3 properties facing onto Waden Lane, and these properties will be located to the west of the access road. These are the proposed elevations of plots A4 to A6, which would be on the opposite side of the access road, also fronting Waden Lane. This would be a detached dwelling in the centre of the site, backing onto number 38 Waden Lane. And a similar 2 dwellings at the top of the site. These would be juxtaposed between the properties on Chestnut Avenue and Green Lane. And finally, coming back down the site towards Waden Lane would be this central terrace of 3 more 4-bed properties. On the opposite site, on the north of Waden Lane, as mentioned, there would be a 3-storey block of 9 flats with accommodation in the roof. I'll just take you through some photographs just to help you get your bearings. This is a view of the car park site, so this would be the site with the flattered development on it. It's currently a car park. These buildings at the back I understand, are associated with the railway line which runs to the north. This is just a quick photograph to show you the age, condition and size of some of the existing dairy buildings on site. This is the southernmost part of the site if you refer to your location plan. As you can see, there is a ramp within the site and the land rises significantly up at this point. It is generally level with the properties on Green Lane, but the properties in Chestnut Avenue on this side are set down significantly lower than this part of the site. This is a photograph taken from the boundary looking towards two new properties built in Chestnut Avenue. You can see the fence line here which slopes down, just to give you an indication of the change in levels between the application site at the top and the set down of those properties. This is a view from that same boundary looking towards the existing properties in Green Lane. So this is the site at which plots 8 and 9 would be located. And that is that same view in reverse from number 65 Green Lane. So you have the existing dairy buildings here, which are single storey. The proposed residential properties at plot 8 and plot 9 would go in this space here. And just beyond, you can see the top of the new houses in Chestnut Avenue. This is first floor level, so again, in comparison to the fence height there, just giving you an indication of change in levels. This is an extract from the submitted block plan, again just to give you an indication of separation distances. So this is the ramp up, of which I showed you a photograph earlier. Plots 8 and 9 would be sited here. Their frontages would face towards the rear gardens of the properties in Green Lane, and their rear aspect would be towards those new properties in Chestnut Avenue. If I can just direct members to the update sheet before we move on to the determining issues. There are a couple of updates to the report, notably that the Section 106 agreement relating to the SPA contributions has now been signed, and therefore reason for refusal number 3 is no longer applicable. However, the applicant has not completed a unilateral undertaking with regards to securing the housing as affordable. Therefore, reason for refusal is still in effect. There are a number of determining issues. The matters of principle and technical opinion are listed there for you. Members are being asked to exercise their judgment on a number of matters, namely the loss of the commercial and employment land, the density of the development and its resultant visual impact, layout and design, and a key point here, the impact on the residential amenity of surrounding properties. The recommendation is therefore that permission be refused for the reasons set out in the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. And this again is subject to public speaking. And could I invite the first objector, Mr. Brewer, to come? Evening, Mr. Brewer. Take your time. I've already said that you don't get executed for going over your 3 minutes, so it doesn't start until you press the button, and just... No. I'll just count if you do that. Right, so as soon as you put your microphone on the three and start speaking, the 3 minutes will start.
Thames Valley Housing Association have plans to include and erect so-called affordable housing at about £450,000 to £500,000 each. That will overshadow, overlook and cause loss of privacy and amenity to all the surrounding houses. There's been no consultation with the neighbours except for a tick box exercise at the end of November 2014, yet fully drawn up plans and documents were presented to Waverley Borough Council before the 19th of December, less than 3 weeks later. In the accompanying documents, TVHA said that no notice of complaints were taken, a statement I can vouch for as I had a few points to make that were just ignored. Even though promises of a visit to my house and then to draw up a scale plan how it would have negligible effect on the houses directly in front of the two large houses. I presume they realised just how wrong their representative was, because this never happened. For those two new £500,000 houses in the old 11 Chestnut Avenue plot, it would be like having two 3-storey skyscrapers blocking out the sun until past midday and peering down into their bedrooms, living space and gardens below. For the Green Lane side, it would be loss of afternoon and evening sun, overlooking, overshadowing, loss of privacy and amenity, something the houses have enjoyed since 1938 and myself since 1987. I've said, why couldn't they build a few bungalows for less abled people instead of the 2-storey houses? There must be some people who would jump at the chance at which the rep almost choked. They hadn't thought of that. Apart from general living noise, there will obviously be extra noise during the day as 4-bedroom houses bring children of all ages. The planned planting of hedges and trees has been abysmal. Those chosen will grow to a phenomenal height, blocking out even more sun and light, and to my personal awareness of TVHA that tending these plants will not happen. Would WBC police this matter in perpetuity with gusto? The WBC planning regulations are very complex, too complex for me to understand in one go. Indeed, I am glad that we have such committees, knowledgeable officers to understand them. For my little dabble, because of this application, it seems that TVHA have broken several of the WBC rules in their plan. Not the least are the 2-storey buildings out of keeping with the existing buildings that are all single-storey. Even those which to be demolished in this area are single-storey. I believe that it is also way over the density regulations, but I now see that WBC Planning Committee upheld all of the existing regulations that, for want of a better term, are over my head. And I want to thank Ms. Catherine Pearson for her diligence and hard work in this matter so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brewer. And now could I ask Emma Barnett, who is a supporter of the scheme, to come and speak. Once again, your 3 minutes will not start until you press the button.
Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Emma Barnett and I'm speaking on behalf of my client, Thames Valley Housing Association. The clear message coming from central government is that the planning system should do everything it can to support housing delivery. The National Planning Policy Framework confirms that this means granting planning permission for development proposals where relevant policies are out of date, unless any adverse impacts of so doing would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. It clarifies that relevant policies should not be considered up to date if the local planning authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites. The officer's report before you confirms that the Council's latest estimates suggest a housing land supply of only 3.7 years, significantly short of the 5 years required by the National Planning Policy Framework. The Council's housing policies are therefore out of date. Members do not need me to remind them of the chronic need for housing, in particular affordable housing in the area. At April this year, there were 1,558 households on the Council's housing register. Of these, 324, or 21%, currently live in the Farnham area. As you will be aware, the proposed development is a joint investment venture between Waverley Borough Council and Thames Valley Housing Association. The Council has provided a capital contribution to assist with the land purchase to enable the site to be brought forward and a scheme of 100% affordable housing to be delivered. Without investment from the Council, Thames Valley Housing Association would not be able to purchase the site, and it is likely that the site would be sold to a private developer and the amount of affordable housing provided would be significantly reduced. And the opportunity to provide an additional 21 homes in affordable homes in Farnham to meet local housing need will be lost. The proposals before you were subject to public consultation and pre-application discussions with your officers, and the number of units have been reduced in response to concerns, from 25 units to now 21 units. To lose any further units would make the scheme unviable, and the site simply would not be delivered. The National Planning Policy Framework confirms that housing applications should be considered in the context of the presumption in favour of sustainable development. My client supports your officer's view that the site has limited potential to provide accommodation for other industrial uses, and this is an appropriate site for residential development. As you will note from your officer's report, it is recommended that the application be refused on 2 grounds. One of these is the failure to complete a legal agreement to secure affordable housing. The applicant has confirmed its willingness to enter into such an agreement. The final proposal relates to the perceived unacceptable impact on 11 Chestnut Avenue. It is worth pointing out that the Council's own policy contained in the SPD for residential extensions advises that a separation distance of 21 metres is required to prevent overlooking and the loss of privacy. Plot A8 is approximately 29 metres from 11 Chestnut Avenue, significantly in excess of the Council's 21 metre guidance. The distances from the proposed new plot A9 and the dwellings at 9 Chestnut Avenue are a minimum of 27.5 metres and the two-storey element and 23.5 metres from the single-storey element, again both in excess of the Council standards. My client is also aware... My client is also aware of the objections relating to the impact on Green Lane. As noted in your officer's report, the window-to-window separation distance in this instance is 32 metres, as much as 11 metres in excess of the Council standards. Whether it is a front-to-back or a back-to-back relationship is immaterial.
I think I'd better stop you there.
Okay,
You've had
fine.
extra time. Thank you very much indeed. Can you turn off the... Just press it again. Lovely, thank you. Right, gosh. Right, over to you, members. We've got Councillor Lear, Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Frost. So, Councillor Lear first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Whilst I agree with the need for affordable housing in the borough, I'm troubled really by reason 1 on page 88, and I just think that we have a duty to our residents, and I agree with the officer here that actually if people are enjoying existing amenity of privacy and they're not overlooked, then we have a duty of care to ensure that actually we do our best and our very best to protect that. And I would be very, very uneasy about going against the advice and guidance of the officer on reason 1 for that very reason. And I would suggest that actually this is an overbearing development, and I agree with the officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is very close to my ward, and I know that this development, well, I believe also that this development would bring an massive excess of traffic in the local area. As you know, members, that area has got enough traffic as it is, especially with the schools in the local area. I know affordable housing is needed, believe you me, but this looks like battery hen farming. It really does. I think it's totally unnecessary how many dwellings they're proposing in that area. The actual plans for the properties look appalling, very cramped. It's high density, overcrowding, and I think it will be awful and have a detrimental effect in the local area and for the local residents. I think the objection, the gentleman that objected earlier, I think his points were very, very valid.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Frost?
Well, I'm going to go the opposite view. We do need affordable housing, and Thames Valley Housing has always provided good estates, and there are a lot of them around in Waverley. I'm disappointed that we will be looking at getting rid of employment land, but as it says in the report, there have been 90 expressions of interest, but all of those were to develop the land into residential. I do think that on this particular one we have a bit of an unbalance. We have the need for the housing. We know that Thames Valley, they're not going to sell these for 500,000. They do actually want to provide affordable housing. I think we should go and have a look at it. For me, it's an ideal location on those two sites. And if you've ever had to look at the railway sidings there, as I've had for many, many years, a nicely designed estate would look very good there. But before we dismiss this and say we're going to accept refusal, I think we should actually go and have a look at it on site. Look at the road. It is a busy road. Make no bones about that, and there are school children making their way down that road to Waden School, so we do have to think of safe routes for schools. But I would like us just to have a look at it. So I am proposing a site visit. I hope I would have a seconder.
That was going to be my next question. Does Councillor Foster have a seconder? Councillor Pott?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be happy to second the proposal from Mrs. Frost. It really is very much an on-balance. I, for one, would very much appreciate a site visit because I'm not quite sure which way at the moment. I have real concerns, but we do have to balance that with the need for housing. Thank you.
Right, members, we have a proposal for a site visit. Can we take a vote on that first of all, please? Those in favour of a site visit, would you please show?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And those opposed to a site visit?
1, 2.
And those who are abstaining? In that case, there will be a site visit. It'll be on the 7th of July at 9:30, presumably. Yes. Right, thank you very much, members. Right, moving on to item A3, which is the third application on page 91 of your agenda. So this is application WA 2015-0694, the erection of 2 detached dwellings with associated parking and the creation of new vehicular access following the demolition of the existing dwelling at Stony Lees, 59 Boundstone Road in Rowledge. And once again, it's Catherine who's going to introduce this for the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site is located to the south of Boundstone Road at the junction with Shrubs Lane, which runs down here. Currently on site is a chalet-style property located to the eastern part of the site. The proposal seeks the demolition of that property and in its place the erection of 2 detached 2-storey dwellings. The existing vehicular access would be reused to serve plot 1 here, and a new vehicular access would be provided for plot 2. These are the elevations of plot 1. As you can see, a fairly traditionally designed 2-storey family dwelling, and the same again for plot 2, slightly different design there. This is the existing chalet property, photograph taken from Boundstone Road. You can see the existing hedging along the frontage and the verge there. This is a photograph just to show you the relationship to number 65A, which is located to the southwest of the application site. That property is a bungalow, and this is a picture from the garden of that property. You have the existing 2-storey property here, number 61. This is the approximate position of plot 2, and plot 1 would obviously go on the position of the existing chalet property at 59. This is a view from the other nearest neighbour, which is number 2 Shrubs Lane. That property again is a 2-storey detached property. It doesn't have any side-facing windows facing directly onto the site, and in this part of the garden there is an existing shed and garage, the main amenity space being round the side outside of the photograph here. If I can just take members briefly to the update sheet, starting on page 1. There is an error, apologies, in the introduction. The application has been brought before the Area Committee at the request of the local ward member. You will see we've received the comments from the County Highway Authority, who raised no objection subject to conditions, similarly from the Surrey Wildlife Trust. There have been 2 additional letters of representation, which you can note there the points raised, and a response to those comments and the previous comments received from the applicant's agent. There are also some additional highways conditions recommended and a condition securing the ecological works as set out in the responses received, and a couple of additional informatives. Again, members are being asked to consider a number of issues this evening. The principle of development, the site is within the developed area of Farnham. Issues of highways, access and parking, the County Highway Authority have raised no objection to the scheme, and the effect upon the SPA. The members are being asked to exercise their judgment with regards to the visual impact and the design of the proposals, having regard to the locality, and also the impact upon existing residential amenities. The recommendation is therefore as set out on pages 4 and 5 of the update sheet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. This again is application is subject to public speaking, and I understand again that you understand what you're doing. Can I invite the first objector, Chris Mead, to come along and speak? I think by now you're probably getting the hang of it. Big button in the middle, and it starts. The 3 minutes starts when you begin speaking.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. My objections relate primarily to appearance and character, to highway safety and density of buildings, in particular as seen from the point of view of the few dozen residents living within a 100-metre radius of the junction between Boundstone Road and Shrubs Lane. These residents have already seen in the last few years the addition of 3 very substantial developments, houses that have been squeezed into gardens in that immediate environment, and this development is seen as a bridge too far in terms of adding yet more changes to the appearance and character of a very distinctive little patch of Farnham. I note from the list of objections I've just seen, or additional comments, I'm so sorry, that I've seen this evening from the applicant and agent, the rather dismissive comment about impact on character is subjective and a matter of judgment. Well, it sure as hell is. And the subjective judgment of the people who live in that 100-metre radius is that this is a bridge too far. No one is objecting to development on the site, but we do object to the construction of 2 very large buildings replacing 1 small to medium-sized one. My primary problem with the density is that at a meeting with the developer, I was given assurance that the height of the first floor windows of both properties would not be any higher than the existing property, which I'm sure is correct. What I did not appreciate, and this is probably my fault rather than his, is that the height of the ridge is some 30% higher, above both buildings, is some 30% higher than that of the existing building. So we are talking of a density that is inappropriate to the immediate environs. The other issue that the local folk feel very strongly about is highway safety. Shrubs Lane is in fact a designated safe walking route to Rowledge Village School and is pretty busy at those times of day, but is an inherently dangerous junction. Boundstone Road is quite a busy road. Shrubs Lane is a tiny little entrance in and out onto that road, serving some 16 or 17 houses with an average of 3 cars each. The existing property is set well back from the road, and the sight lines to the left as you come out of Shrubs Lane is not too bad. Our great concern is that the development will reduce the sight lines as you come from as you try and exit from Shrubs Lane. The overshadowing aspect is one that is not illustrated by the picture from my property, number 2 Shrubs Lane, which was taken in the back garden. It is in fact much more prevalent from the front that you would see just how much overshadowing would occur if this was allowed to develop. And finally, I'm sorry your facts are wrong. There are 2 windows on my property overlooking that, or on the side of that development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Now we have Mr. Andrew Cam, who is a supporter of the application. Good evening, Mr. Cam, and once again, I think by now you'd know the routine.
I'll just turn it off first. Good evening, my name is Andrew Cam. I'm the Managing Director of a small local house building company employing local people with offices in Farnham. I'm speaking in support of the application to construct 2 detached family houses at 59 Boundstone Road. Waverley's own planning officer, Catherine Pearson, has recommended the application for approval, and I urge you to do the same. The site is located within the settlement area, and therefore the principle of development is agreed. The application makes good use of a previously developed site. We will provide well-designed family housing, offering flexible living accommodation. The new properties will be constructed from good quality materials to enhance the local area. Clay roof tiles, timber windows and external doors, painted pebble dash and brickwork for external facades similar to the neighbouring properties. The existing mature boundary hedges and trees will be retained, and I believe the properties are in keeping with their local environment. there have been some objections focused on height, overdevelopment and traffic issues. The new houses, from our measurements, are approximately 1.8 metres higher to the ridge line than the existing house. The new homes will be in line with the existing neighbouring two-storey houses to the rear and side. The first floor windows are a similar height to the existing first floor windows. With regard to overdevelopment, our scheme is approximately 8 dwellings per acre, which is similar to many of the existing and neighbouring houses. With regard to traffic, our scheme reuses an existing access that's been in place for many years, and there is no access onto Shrubs Lane to add to that density of traffic. We will create a second access onto Boundstone Road. Both accesses provide a 2.4 by 90 metre vision display, and there will be no detrimental effect to the existing vision display for Shrubs Lane. Surrey County Council have made no objection, and we comply with Waverley's own standards with regard to parking. I will urge the committee to concur with Waverley's own planning officer's recommendation for approval and approve the scheme for much needed family housing in the local area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cam. And now it's open to members. Yeah. Councillor Pritchard?
Yes, sorry, Madam Mayor. Can I just verify what the distance between the two properties are in the plan, and also the distance between the existing property on the left to the new proposed property, please?
Will that take some time? Shall I take another question? We'll come back to you with the answer. Don't worry, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Frost?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I've sat here for many years listening to large houses in Short Heath Road being pulled down and putting blocks of flats and little sort of groupings of 2 or 3 houses in, and us saying, look, this has got to stop. And although we are discussing a particular application here, my concern about this in Rowledge is that this is the start of it. And I think it's very important that we make sure when we give permission we do know what we are doing, because there are lots of large houses in Rowledge which can be converted into 2 or 3 large houses on that particular site. And it does seem to me that we need to be very careful what we are looking at. And I'm sorry to say this, we either have meetings where it's no, no, no all the way through, or we have meetings where we say it's all very much on balance, and we need to have a look at it. I'm sure these are very nice houses, and I'm sure they're large houses. But for me, I don't want to start taking gardens and making them into mini estates. That to me is against what the design statement's all about, that the Farnham Town Council wrote for Rowledge, and the local plan, which is emerging at the moment, is all about. So I'm rather torn on this one. I know Bourne Homes very well, and I'm sure they're going to be lovely houses, but I'm not sure I want to start turning gardens into mini housing estates.
Councillor Frost, do we have anybody else who wishes to comment? Oh, sorry, Councillor Story, you indicated.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just take exception to a statement in conclusion and planning judgment on page 110 that the proposed development will be in keeping with the varied pattern and density of development found locally. I think you've only got to look at the plan on page 92 to see that this area of Boundstone Road is large houses in the middle of very large plots, and these 2 houses together seem to me to, as Councillor Frost has just said, completely go against what is in the design statement for the Rowledge area, and would be substantial overdevelopment of this site.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Do we have any other comments? Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Chairman. I have just one question for the officers concerning the effect upon SPA, page 105. It says, due to the availability of alternative recreational opportunities within the area, which could divert residents from the use of the SPA, the proposal would not have a likely significant effect upon the integrity of the SPA. Is there any evidence for this?
Are you going to answer that, Elizabeth?
Thank you, Chairman. This is in respect of the Wilden Heaths SPA, and this follows advice from Natural England that unlike the Thames Basin Heaths, where we have a specific policy which we're required to follow to ensure mitigation of the effect on the SPA, with respect to the Wilden Heaths, there's no similar objection in principle because they support the view there's available alternative recreational opportunities in the vicinity which potentially divert occupiers from going to the SPA. So we follow that advice. They are the experts, and we wouldn't be in a position, I think, to be supporting of an objection to likely significant effect on the SPA on the basis of that reasoning. Thank you, Chairman.
Let you come back, Councillor Williamson, but we're not going to have another debate on whether or not you think spas work, okay?
I understand it's very sensitive. However, have Natural England supplied any evidence other than a recommendation to you? Because they don't carry the responsibility. It's the responsibility of Waverley, and you need evidence.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the committee needs to come to a view as to whether they think there will be a likely significant effect on the interest of the SPA. And that is a judgment for members to make, and our recommendation is based on our experience and the advice of Natural England. As you say, they are the consultee. Waverley is the competent authority making the decision, but the experience is that there will not be a likely significant effect, and therefore an appropriate assessment is not necessary. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Lear?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a fan of building in gardens, and when I look at the density of this, the block plan here, the location plan, it does seem to me that whilst this is obviously a garden development of some sort, it has also resulted in a cram development. And back to what I was saying earlier, really, I think with garden grabbing, which I don't enjoy deliberating upon, I don't like it, this cram is a form of cramped development and probably overdevelopment of the site, and it will then encroach on all of the other issues with overlooking and privacy. So I think it's an overdevelopment of that site. Thank you, Chairman.
Does anybody have any new points? Councillor MacLeod?
Councillor Frost and Councillor Story have both commented on the relevance of the Farnham design statement. I may have missed it, but I didn't hear that mentioned in the officer's report, or I haven't seen it. I'd be interested to know what the officers feel about the relevance of the Farnham design statement to this particular application. Thank you.
While they're getting that, can I remind them as well about Councillor Pritchard's measurements? So whenever you're ready to come back with either a response, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can perhaps address that recent point first. If you refer to page 101 of your agenda report, you will note the reference to the Farnham design statement. Obviously, the design statement is quite general and offers you the opportunity to exercise your judgment as to whether you think that the development preserves the essential rural character of the village. That is the judgment that you are being asked to make. Obviously, officers have set out what they consider to be the correct outcome for this application. It is open to members to reach a different view on that judgment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps if I can just, sorry, Chairman, just pick up your queries, Councillor Pritchard. Can you just remind me which measurements it is that you want? This one?
Yeah, that distance between that and the existing building.
Yep.
And
between the two. The distance between plot 2 and number 61, which is this here on the left, is approximately 4.6 metres. And the distance between the two properties, plot 1 and plot 2, is approximately 2 metres. Thank you, Chairman.
I hope you're not going to say just wow. I mean, can we have another comment, Councillor Pritchard, if you wish to speak?
Just very quickly, Madam Mayor, is just on that grounds then I think that it should be refused on overcrowding and density.
Right, members, I think we've probably come to our own conclusions on this, so can I put the recommendation to a vote unless anybody has any last-minute queries or statements? The revised recommendation is set out on the update sheet, subject to the conditions 1 to 6 and informatives 1 to 4 on pages 110 to 112 in the agenda, and conditions 7 to 10 and informatives 5 to 7 set out on page 5 of the update sheet, that permission be granted. Can I see all those in favour, please, of granting permission on that site?
1.
So, can I see all those who are not in favour or are what do I say? Not granting. They're not in favour of the proposal.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And anybody abstaining on that? Can I go straight to another refusal now? Yes, can I have an alternative motion, please, an alternative recommendation and some reasons for it, please? Councillor Frost? Thank you, Councillor Frost. Seems to be quoting the design statement rather succinctly, which I'm delighted to hear. Does anybody else wish to add anything to that? Councillor Pritchard?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just that I think it's overcrowding and the density, it just doesn't suit the local character of the other dwellings.
Anybody wish to add anything? Design? Scale? Everyone quite happy? Or is Catherine coming up with something wonderful? You're going to give it a whirl.
Chairman, would you like me to try and phrase that for you? Yeah. The proposal, by virtue of the scale, density, layout and amount of development, would result in an overdevelopment of the site, which would be cramped and out of keeping with the essential rural character and low density of the surrounding area, in conflict with policies D1 and D4 of the local plan, the Farnham Design Statement and the MPPF 2012. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. Does anybody wish to add anything? It struck me as encompassing most things. The officer's quite happy with that. Right, in that case, I'll put the motion to refuse. Those in favour, please, of refusing that application, can you just get your hands around? And those against refusal?
1.
And any abstentions? In that case, permission for that one is refused. Thank you, members. Right, moving swiftly on to page 113 of the agenda. This is a non-speaking item, and it's the erection of a detached dwelling and garage following demolition of the existing garage, together with associated works at 39 West Street in Farnham. And it's Catherine again. You're earning your money tonight, Catherine.
Last one from me, Chairman. The application site is located at the rear of number 39 West Street, which is Sandford House, next door to Farnham Museum, just to get your bearings. The Sandford House is a Grade 2 star listed building, formerly the Language School, has now reverted back to a residential dwelling. There are a number of residential properties, including the converted coach house here, properties down here, and a new dwelling down here at the rear of number 40. The proposal is for the erection of a detached dwelling here. So coming down the driveway, there would be a parking and turning area in this location, and it would be a modest 2-storey dwelling with a garden area here towards the south. The vehicular access would be shared with number 39 as existing, and also the coach house conversion properties which also use that access. The property would be 2 stories in height, designed to appear as a modest dower house at the rear of the main Georgian properties fronting onto West Street. As you can see, it would have 2 bedrooms on the first floor and living accommodation on the ground floor. The main aspect would be out towards the west, towards number 40. I'll just show you some photographs of the site. So this is the existing driveway heading south. This is the corner of the plot and the property, the new dwelling at number 40. You can just see the roof line of that property here in the photograph. The property would be in this location here. As you can see, this area is currently used informally for parking for a number of properties. This is looking back up in the opposite direction. This is obviously the Farnham Museum here, and you've got the corner of number 39 here. The majority of the length of the garden would be retained to serve number 39. This is the museum building at the rear of the Farnham Museum, and the property would be just off the photograph behind these parked vans here. This is just a plan with regards to policy TC10, which is the green envelope plan. The red square here in the middle is the proposed dwelling at the back of number 39. This is obviously the Farnham Museum garden building and the new dwelling down at number 40. The green hatched area is the green envelope covered by policy TC10. The orange here is the town centre boundary. As you can see, it's just outside of the town centre. Before we go through the determining issues, there are a couple of updates to draw your attention to on page 5 of the update sheet. We haven't received any comments back from South East Water, and the recommendation therefore stays the same. Members, you are being asked to exercise your judgment, particularly with regards to the impact of the development on the setting of the listed building and also the character of the conservation area. This application has been subject to pre-application advice. It has been revised and refined, and the Historic Buildings Officer is happy that the proposal would not harm and therefore would preserve the character and setting of the listed building and the character of the conservation area. You're also being asked to consider the general visual impact and design of the property, including any impact on the openness and greenness of the green envelope, together with any impact on residential amenity. As I've mentioned, the recommendation remains as set out in the agenda that permission be granted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. Members. Councillor Blagden.
As this is my ward, I thought it was best that I start off on this. I think that it's a slight incidence of cramming a housing into the narrowest slots, but it's no worse than many of the other ones to that particular area. To my mind, I don't think one can object to it on the grounds of having more density of buildings as a whole to the south of West Street. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blagden. Does anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Lear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I quite like the design actually, and I would agree with Councillor Blagden. I think the design is actually in keeping with the properties around that area, and I know the area well. And actually, if the Historic Buildings Officer is minded to make statements such as he has, I'm inclined to agree. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lear. Councillor Potts.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I cannot see sort of realistic grounds for refusal of this. I don't have any particular issue as such with this application. One of the sort of slight concerns I do have is around accessing the site. That is a concern, and I'm just thinking aloud. If we were minded to pass this application this evening, and I say if we were minded to pass it, can we ensure that there are some really strong, robust conditions in terms of accessing the site, the method statement in terms of traffic management for that? That does concern me, given the fact that we have a number of listed buildings around there, and we also have, places like the Garden Gallery, which is very close. I think if we can just be really sensitive to that and make sure that is very robustly conditioned. I don't know if the officers would like to comment on that. Thank you.
What do you feel about the conditions as they stand?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Potts, if I can just draw your attention, there are a couple of conditions recommended. We recognise that it's a town centre location and there will be constraints, particularly during the construction phase. Condition 8 on page 137 obviously is with regards to a method of construction statement, and obviously that will control where construction vehicles park and unload materials onto the site. And also condition 12, which is about hours of construction, obviously to try and control the flow of vehicles in and out of the site, and also obviously make sure that it doesn't harm any amenities in the area. So we feel there are sufficient controls with regards to access to the site.
Councillor Potts, do they satisfy you?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, may I just briefly come back on that? One of the, on condition 12, where we've got the actual hours of construction. Now, I fully appreciate 8 till 6, they'd need to work on the site. However, knowing Farnham and the traffic before 9 o'clock, is there, in terms of sort of deliveries to the site, something like that, could we sort of separate the two, is what I'm trying to say? Thank you.
Yes, could you answer that, Catherine? I share Councillor Potts' concerns.
Certainly, thank you, Madam Chairman. We could amplify or expand that condition, or simply have a second condition about deliveries not taking place before a certain time, before 9 o'clock in the morning or after, say, 5 o'clock in the evening, if that would help.
I think a separate condition, personally. What do you think, Councillor Potts?
Madam Chairman, thank you for allowing me to come back. Yes, I think if we could have another condition purely focused on the actual times for deliveries, that would be very helpful. Maybe if we did 9:15, and then, as I say, it doesn't miss all the traffic in Farnham, but it hopefully saves an awful lot of it. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Frost?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Going along with what Councillor Potts has been saying, one of the things we don't want are construction vehicles parked in West Street, because that will just bring the traffic in Farnham to a halt. Because we have the problem now where vehicles are parked either side of the road, and it's a bit of a chicane, and we won't be able to get, if there are construction vehicles parked there, there will be difficulty with emergency vehicles.
The officers seem to be coming up with something for that. What's your answer to that one, Kate?
Condition 8, which is the method of construction statement from Highways, covers parking for vehicles for site personnel, operatives and visitors, and unloading of plant and material. So that can all be captured in that condition. Yeah.
Councillor Pritchard, do you still wish to speak?
It was just a question, Madam Chairman, of how would that be enforced, timing, and obviously that delivery? Because if a lorry just turns up at 8 o'clock with a load of steel girders, how is that enforced?
Thank you, Chairman. If I could pick that up. In the usual way, we expect any applicant that has a grant of planning permission to comply with their conditions. And I think it can be said largely that developers do tend to comply. But we have, in the past, around the borough, as you'll be aware, have had instances where sometimes it doesn't go quite to plan. And we rely on the public, and indeed you as local members, to draw our attention very quickly to any possible breaches of control. Of course, we have an enforcement team that are there ready to respond to concerns in relation to that. And just to give you some confidence, there is a development site not too far from Godalming where we have had some issues in respect of breach of method of construction statement, and the enforcement team have been very effective in even going to the extent of actually going out at the times to inspect whether there is a breach, and then liaising with the developers to say, look, this is not in line with your method of construction statement, and we've been very effective in bringing them back to comply with the details that you have agreed as planning authority. So I think we can give you confidence that if you impose a condition, hopefully it will be complied with and enforced. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We have, first of all, to agree that new condition that we put in about the hours for the delivery. Do we need to agree the wording, or can we leave that to the officers? It's a fairly simple wording, isn't it? So we leave that to the officers. Is everyone, can I see who's in agreement with that additional condition to be imposed about the delivery of building materials?
Yeah,
is that unanimous? Anybody opposed to that? So can we go straight to the recommendation? So the recommendation is subject to conditions 1 to 14 on pages 135 to 140, and the new condition on delivery, and informatives 1 to 4 on page 140 of the agenda, that permission be granted. Can I see all those in favour, please, of granting permission?
1, 2, 3, 4. That would be 9.
And those against granting permission?
1.
1. Any abstentions? Right, moving on then to B2. Sorry, that was agreed. I hope I said that at some point. Moving on to B2, yes. Yeah, it's down, yeah. Yep. Item B2, this is on page 141 of your agenda, WA 2015-0493. The erection of 4 dwellings following demolition of offices. I've got officers on my crib sheet, which is rather good, isn't it? But it is offices that we're demolishing, you'll be relieved to know. And it's at 14A Abbott House, Hale Road, Farnham. And Tim, a new face, I hope you're feeling better. I'd like to introduce this application to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, starting off with the site location, the site is located in a backland position, as you can see, behind residential properties on Hale Road. Here. The site surroundings also consist of other residential properties, Forge Close to the east, some other properties here to the west, and the car sales garage to the south. This aerial photograph provides you with an indication of the existing site arrangement. The site contains an existing office building and a detached office building, which I refer to as the annex in the report. The proposal is for the erection of 4 3-bedroom dwellings in the form of 2 pairs of semi-detached properties. The existing vehicular access to the site would be utilised with a change to the parking and position of buildings on site, so the parking would form at the front of the site and the residential properties move further back into the site than where the existing office building is at the moment. Each property would have a private outdoor amenity space. Turning to the proposed elevations, the pair of semi-detached properties have been designed to mirror each other, so all 4 properties would be identical. They would have traditional slate roof, a mixture of render and brickwork to the front, and some metal cladding to add to find some modern variety. This is the rear of the elevations, plots 1 and 2. and the proposed side elevations. So you can see the you could say simplistic design proposed. And here are the proposed elevations for plots 3 and 4 and the rear and the side elevations. In terms of the ground floor and first floor plan layouts would be the same for each property. Here you can see the arrangements for the ground floor, and here the first floor arrangements to the properties, and the roof plan showing the single ridge structure with front projecting gable features. With the application were some proposed sections. Members, this gives you an idea of parameters of scale. This proposed section at the top is a view from the rear, looking at the rear of the proposed properties. I've labelled in the background the indication of some of the neighbouring properties to the site. You can just about make here the outline of the existing office building on the site. That gives you an idea, an indication of the height comparison between the proposed dwellings and the office building. Take you through some site photographs now. That's looking down towards Hale Road of the existing access, which is proposed to be utilised. This is the rear of the existing main office building on site. On the planning history, you can see actually was originally constructed as a dwelling, hence with its design and appearance there. This is looking further across the rear of the site. You can see the backland position of parking and the annex building at the background there. This is a view part of the existing north boundary, which would become part of the car parking area to serve some of the residential units. And this is just giving you an idea of the eastern boundary treatment, which would be cut back, but we have put on a landscaping scheme to capture definitive boundary treatments. In terms of the determining issues of the application, the site has a lawful office use. You'll see in the report how officers have addressed the loss of office use. The density of the proposed development, officers consider to be appropriate, taking into account the surrounding residential development. Its design and visual impact would add interest to the site and the surrounding area. And we consider that the relationship to surrounding residential properties and the amenity space proposed for each dwelling is now acceptable. If I can turn your attention now to the update sheet. The applicants have now completed the unilateral undertaking in respect of SPA, and therefore recommendation B is no longer applicable, and therefore officers conclude that recommendation A stands as per on the update sheet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tim. Over to members. Councillor Hill.
Madam Chairman, when I first saw this application, I certainly had my doubts about how 4 houses could be squeezed into the site. But to be honest, I've considered this very carefully. I went and walked the site the other day, and it is a substantially larger site than I ever imagined, and I think well suited to the houses that are proposed for the property. I'm very pleased to see, and the site is well hidden from view, and it's interesting that there will potentially be less cars using the lane and the access to Hale Road than are using it currently with the offices in place. It's very good to see the parking guidelines are being met. I'm very sorry for the loss of office space, and
that some businesses may have to look for new locations, but I have to accept that there are a lot of changes to working practices these days, and offices like that are not necessarily needed anymore. So I will be supporting this application.
Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Frost?
Thank you, Chairman. I will be supporting the application, but I just have one concern, and that is, as you go out of the little lane, you immediately come upon Hale Road. And I don't think that the splays at the bottom are big enough, because as you come out there, you're going to have to edge out to be able to exit that site. Now, it's going to be better because we're going to have fewer cars exiting the site, but it's still a very difficult site to exit onto a very busy road with cars parked along Hale Road. And I just wondered whether there was any room to increase the splays so that you get better sight lines when you come out of the lane. Thank you.
The officer's got any comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have myself informally discussed with the highways officer. He acknowledges that the site is a small access, and the reason for visibility displays being hindered is for cars parked on the road, so that there are no restrictions there. So really it's an existing situation which really can't be enhanced under this application. Thank you.
Right, so yes, we're stuck with it basically, Councillor Frost. Anybody else have a comment before we move to the recommendation? Councillor Potts?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to take up the point of Councillor Frost, and I totally understand her point, might I suggest that perhaps some double yellow lines at the next parking review?
Right, councillors, are you quite happy to move to the recommendation? The revised recommendation that's set out on page 6 of your update sheet, that subject to conditions 1 to 22 and informatives 1 to 9, which are set out on pages 173 to 181 of your main agenda, that permission be granted. Can I see all those in favour, please, of granting permission on this site?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And those of you who would refuse permission? And any abstentions? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on then to item B3. And is that Tim done for the night? This is WA 2015-0386. It's on page 183 of your agenda, and it's the erection of a dwelling and garage with associated works at land at the end of the cul-de-sac northwest side, whatever that really means, but anyway, 3 Styles Road. Oh, I see, on the northwest side of 3 Styles Road, Farnham. And it's Rachel who is going to introduce this application. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located on the northwest side of 3 Styles Road. You'll see it's outlined in red for you on the screen. Again, an aerial view of the site, and you'll note it's outlined in red. This constraints map illustrates some of the policies applying to this site. The developed area, colours aren't showing on here brilliantly, but this is a developed area just here. And you'll see that the application site does lie just outside of that, within the AGLV and the countryside beyond the green belt. The ASVI is this area here with a thick cross hatch. This is a proposed block plan. Permission is sought for the construction of a detached dwelling and garage and new vehicular access into the site. You'll see marked the dwelling would be positioned 11 metres from the boundary with number 29. The proposed elevations. There's a few measurements marked for you on screen. There would be a ridge height of 7.9 metres. The width would measure 13 metres. And the depth 9.2 metres. The proposed floor plans. Accommodation would be spread over 2 floors. This is the proposed garage elevations and floor plans. You'll see you've got a height of just under 4 metres and it'll be 6 metres by 6. This is the proposed street scene. You'll note that the proposed dwelling would be subordinate in height to the next door neighbour, number 29. I'll take you through a few photographs now. You may recall the site from the site visit yesterday. These are the photos looking towards and from number 29 Freestyles Road. In particular, you'll note the picture window towards the centre of the facing elevation. And these are some views of the existing street scene. This house here is number 29 with the application site just to the right. This is a view into the application site. You'll note the existing entrance. I'll take you through now the determining issues relevant to this application. In respect to matters of principle and technical judgment, you've got housing land supply, biodiversity, the effect on the SPA, and a loss of existing agricultural use. In respect of matters of judgment, the impact on the character and beauty of the countryside beyond the green belt, the impact on the area of great landscape value, AGLV, design and visual amenity, residential amenity, and the sustainability of the location. In particular, members are asked to exercise their judgment on whether the proposal for the new dwelling would preserve the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside, the sustainability of its location, and whether it would preserve the existing landscape character of the AGLV. Officers advise there would be some encroachment into the countryside. The proposed dwelling would be closely related to the existing residential development of Freestyles Road and would be in keeping with the existing pattern of development. The benefits of the application by way of the provision of a new dwelling in a sustainable location are to be balanced against any harm identified to the countryside and the AGLV. Members are also asked to consider the impact of the development on the adjacent neighbour number 29. Members on a site visit had the opportunity to visit this dwelling. The proposal would provide a good separation distance to number 29, and there is a central picture window to number 29 which would face the proposal. If I could draw your attention now to pages 6 to 8 of the update sheet. Members will note a number of additional representations received in relation to this application. The majority of these concerns are addressed within the report. One additional concern raised relates to the impact of the proposal on the ASVI. You've seen this runs to the south of Freestyles Road and would be the proposal would be visible from the ASVI. The proposal would result in a minor encroachment into the countryside. However, single dwelling, this impact is considered in officers' view to be modest, and the dwelling would be reviewed in the context of the existing development of Freestyles Road. The recommendation remains as set out on page 202 of the agenda. That permission be granted subject to conditions 1 to 8. as set out on pages 202 to 205 of the agenda, and informatives 1 to 5 on pages 205 to 206. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Members? Councillor Blagden?
Again, as the ward councillor for this particular area, I'd like to object to the creation of yet another building at the end of Three Stars Road. Previously, number 29, which is the one that exists at the moment, was going to be the last. But then, of course, it's creeping along. And what, for me, is the most difficult part is that it then gives access to the whole of the green space that is to the north end of what in another area is called the hop fields. And the last thing we need is the whole of that green area being served by more than the one access that's going to take place in the new development nearer to off Crundle Lane. I'm afraid to say that I worry about that, and I don't think that it is apposite to that particular area. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blagden. Councillor Williamson?
Thanks very much, Chairman. I find myself agreeing with Councillor Blagden. And I have to declare an interest, which perhaps I should have done before, because I walk my dog along here nearly every day. It's outside the built-up area. It's outside the draft neighbourhood plan built-up area. It's in an AGLD. It's prominent. I see that the house adjoining it every day as I walk along the footpath. As Councillor Blagden said, in the discussions that we had on the hop fields, this particular area was to be protected, and if this house were to go ahead, and I know one shouldn't sort of consider what might happen next, but assure us, eggs are eggs. I mean, there will be additional houses built there, and that whole area would be spoilt. So I would be very strongly opposed to any development.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Frost and then Councillor Potts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Could we go back a couple of slides to the slide that shows all the boundaries? That one. And we see that the plot concerned is outside the boundaries. And I think we should turn it down on that alone, because it's not actually in the built-up developed area. It is outside in the area of great landscape value. If it was all in the developed area, that whole plot, we couldn't, I don't think we could object. But it's not. They've crept into the area of great landscape value. And from that point of view, I don't think I will vote for this one, in favour of it, because of that.
Thank you, Councillor Frost. Councillor Potts?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wasn't able to go on the site visit, but I actually did drive down there earlier today and had a look. I like the design of the property. If it was somewhere else, maybe, but I think the points that have been raised are extremely valid. I don't think, to take up Councillor Frost's point, I don't think it is in a suitable position. My other real concern, and I think that we shouldn't forget this, the detrimental effect on the property at number 29, I think would be quite grave. It's not just a little bit of overlooking, a little bit of shadowing. It would be the impact would be enormous. I know officers have to make very much a judgment and an on-balance decision, but I think so do we. And I'm afraid, from what I've seen today, I'm unable to support this. Thank you.
Councillor MacLeod?
I broadly agree with all the comments made by my colleagues. The additional point I'd like to make is, though, in reading the various objection letters, one of the things I noticed was that the occupants of number 29 had actually requested consultation with the developer, and that had been refused. And I think that's very unfortunate. I think the NPPF encourages consultation. And although the occupants are totally against the development, quite naturally, if it had been likely it went ahead, they would like to suggest that the building was placed further back in the site to avoid the effect on the large picture windows that we saw a picture of earlier. And if there had been consultation, that would have been a useful thing to discuss. But I'm against this application for the reasons said by all my colleagues. But I also wish to register the point that I think consultation is extremely important. And I think that the officers are expected to encourage consultation, and I think they should have done so in this case, as the consultation was apparently refused. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to ask Elizabeth to comment, and she indicated she would like to, so would you like to comment?
Chairman, thank you for that. In view of some of the issues members are raising, I just thought it might be helpful just to advise you upon some of them. I do detect you are unhappy with this proposal, and whilst you're disagreeing with us, I think there are grounds upon which you could develop a sustainable objection to the proposal. But what I would guard you against in the first instance is actually finding this unacceptable in principle simply because it is outside of the developed area. And I know that is going to be unpopular to you, but you'll be aware that the planning policy position with the NPPF has changed in respect of countryside policy. And there's nothing in the NPPF, I'm afraid, which allows you to say anymore that development in the countryside is unacceptable in principle. It's not green belt, it's only countryside beyond the green belt. And therefore, as our report has advised you, you need to go a step further than that and find that developing in the countryside will be harmful to its intrinsic character and beauty, because unless it is harmful, it is not unacceptable in principle. Linked to that is the test of sustainability of location. Now, we've given you some advice that we think because it's located at the end of an existing road adjacent to the urban area, we think it's sustainably located. But that is a judgment for you to form independently, that if you think it isn't sustainably located or located in a relatively unsustainable location, that may contribute to your concern that it's a development in the countryside. The other point I think probably needs to be said is there's some concern that this may lead to other proposals coming forward. I'm afraid is taking you away from assessing this on its own individual planning merits. You probably need to blank out what might come forward in the future, because if something does come forward, you would be able to assess that on its individual merits. But for purposes of this application, I must advise that you just assess this in isolation as to whether or not you can find planning harm resulting from this development in its own right, and that is the proper and reasonable judgment that you do need to form. But the other judgment, of course, you can form is whether you think it's harmful to the character of the AGLV, which is a visual judgment as well. So I would guard you against objection in principle, but seek to identify the harm to the character and intrinsic beauty of the countryside and the AGLV. Thank you, Chairman. Yes.
Right, thank you. So we'll move to the recommendation with that firmly in mind. And the recommendation is, as noted on page 202 of your agenda, that subject to conditions 1 to 8 on pages 202 to 205, and the informatives, which you'll find on pages 1 to 5, informatives 1 to 5 on pages 205 to 206, that permission be granted. Can I see all those, please, in favour of granting permission on this site? And can I see all those opposed to granting permission on this site?
Yeah, actually, no, 11. Abstaining.
Do we have any abstentions?
One.
Well, And so once again, members, I need please an alternative recommendation and reasons for it. Right, so we've got, right, Councillor Frost and Councillor Potts. Let's see between you if we can come up with some good reasons for refusal.
Councillor Potts, I bow to you.
Right, I think there are three key points that I'll sort of give you, and we need to then sort of factor some meat on the bones. And I think the first, is, to my mind, still would be the impact on the property at number 29. I think that's absolutely critical. Furthermore, moving on to the actual harmful effect on the character of the AGLV and the overall harm and loss of amenity in respect of the actual countryside, and, if you like, the views across the countryside as well. Perhaps someone can help me a little bit more on that.
Can I just ask a question about the impact on the castle, because the ASVI was very much linked to the views across from the castle and sweeping up to the castle, which, as you know, is grade 1 listed, I think, national listed. So just, you know, can we do anything about, I know it's not the setting of the castle, but the strategic visual element coming across from the castle, because that was certainly a reason for refusal in the past.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you'd need to satisfy yourselves that this dwelling on this plot would harm the setting of the castle, the significance of the castle. Well, if the purpose, part of the purpose of the ASVI is in respect of preserving the setting and the vicinity of the castle, you would still need, in relation to this particular proposal, to identify that harm and how it harms. I don't know whether on the site visit there was an opportunity to view it in that context. Perhaps I'll ask Paul to comment on that. Thank you.
I think from the site visit, I don't feel that the impact on the setting or the views of the castle was an issue. I think the distance is quite significant. So I don't think that will stand as perhaps a reason to refuse the application.
Mr. Williamson?
Yeah, somebody, as I said, who walks it every day. The vista of the ASVI stretches right. If you walk along the Pilgrim's Way, the vista stretches right across from here, which is the start, right across over Old Park Lane, where I live, and then down to the castle, and you can see all of that from that road, from that walkway. So this actually impinges on it, and it really would deflect from that total vista.
So that is a judgment for members, but if this goes to appeal, an inspector will stand on the site and expect those views to be drawn to his attention as to how development of that plot affects views and the setting of the castle. And if members feel they are able to construct a reasonable, defensible argument in relation to that juxtaposition, that is your judgment. But as I say, I haven't been to the site, I wasn't at the site visit, and I'm looking to colleagues that were there to inform that. But that is members' judgment if you feel you want to go forward with that. Personally, I think it would be better to rely on some of the reasons that have already been raised in respect of AGLV and countryside, rather than perhaps a slightly more tenuous link to the castle, but that is your judgment.
Point of clarification, really, on the, I think reference was made to impact on the amenities of the neighbour at number 29, and that harm would be caused. Is it possible to clarify what sort of harm or concerns that members have on that? Is it outlook? Is it light? Is it privacy? Just wonder what.
Sorry, can I come back? To my mind, it's actually it's a combination of both, because I think, as I say, the impact, and I think colleagues would agree, is quite severe on number 29. So you've got the fact that it's privacy in terms of, especially, and again, I know you can't just look at the picture window, but it is very overbearing on their property, and I think that it will be detrimental in terms of light as well.
Members, do we have any further comments? Do we have somebody from the officers that can help us? Thank you. Rachel?
I think we're coming down to 3 reasons for refusal from what you've suggested. The first of those to relate to the impact on the countryside. I'd suggest something along the lines of the proposed dwelling, in regards to its scale, bulk, mass and siting, would result in encroachment into the open countryside and loss of views, and as such would fail to preserve the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside, in conflict with Policy C2 of the Waverley Borough Local Plan and paragraph 17 of the National Planning Policy Framework. Second reason, I think, relate to the area of great landscape value. On that, I would suggest the site lies within an area of great landscape value, within which landscape character is to be conserved and enhanced. The proposal is inconsistent with this aim and conflicts with national, strategic and local policies set out in Policy C3 of the Waverley Borough Local Plan 2002. The third will be with respect to residential amenity and the impact on number 29. I would suggest the proposed development, by virtue of its siting and scale, would result in a material loss of outlook, overbearing form, loss of privacy and a loss of light to number 29 Freestyles Road, and as such would adversely detract from the amenities of that dwelling. The proposal therefore conflicts with policies D1 and D4 of the Waverley Borough Local Plan 2002, the National Planning Policy Framework and the Residential Extensions SPD 2010. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. You voiced, well, mouthed, sorry, I'm talking to the officers now, exactly what I was thinking about when the word view came up. I was just a bit confused there. I mean, as to which view we were talking about and whether or not we could protect it.
I didn't think we had a right to a view.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was just, I saw your expression. It was exactly what I was thinking, you know, so. Right. So, put that recommendation, the new recommendation, which is to refuse for the reasons that Rachel has just outlined, with tidying up. I'm sure we can do something spectacular. Thank you, Rachel. So, can I see all those, please, in favour of refusal?
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, right. Sorry, Councillor, sorry, what were you going to say?
Sorry, Chair, before we move on to the next item, but you haven't asked for people who want to vote against that yet. I just wanted to make a comment about accepting absolutely what Elizabeth says about having to determine this particular application and not worry about where we go in the future. On page 192, it says it's considered the proposal would not result in isolated dwellings in the countryside, and as such, the application is not required to demonstrate any special circumstances. If this one had been passed, we would then have a bridge which would allow the next one to have exactly the same thing said. And it seems to me that that is something that we ought to be able to consider. But I bow to Elizabeth's greater knowledge.
I was going to say, we'll let Elizabeth have the last word on that.
Only to say, Chairman, I do appreciate the concern, but I think to reassure you that if a further application had come forward, if you'd permitted this and a further application had come forward, you'd assess it on its merits, and you may find, unlike this one, that this was one too many in its own right because it projected intrusively into the countryside and created harm that perhaps the one before it didn't create. Because there's no such thing as strict precedent. Just because you're permitting this, you're not duty-bound to permit another one. The strict term is on its own merits. That's the starting point. And no two applications are the same, even if they're next door. So you would be entitled to say, just because we found that one acceptable, this one is not acceptable because it's slightly too far into the open space, or it's slightly more visible from the hills beyond. So you would get an opportunity to reevaluate a new application coming forward. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Right, so that application was refused. Moving on to the last application, B4. This is on page 207 of your agenda, and it's the erection of buildings to provide a mixed use of newspaper offices, 13 residential units and associated parking following the demolition of existing buildings, land at Harts Yard, West Street, Farnham. And it's Tim again, is it, who's going to introduce this for us.
Thank you, Chairman. So, members, starting off with the site location, the site is, as you can see, in irregular shape by the red line. It is situated on the north side of West Street. It contains a variety of buildings. They are all associated with the existing business on site, which has its main frontage to West Street. A public footpath runs through the site, following my arrow here, which provides link up to Long Garden Walk. This aerial photograph helps show really the amount of buildings on site. The site is within the town centre of Farnham and within its conservation area. This is the proposed site plan. The proposal is for erection of 13 residential dwellings and to provide a mixed use of newspaper offices. The actual offices use here at ground floor is to be retained. The actual office loss proposed to be removed is at first floor, which I'll come on to later. The existing public footpath access through the site is here. The residential units will predominantly be positioned from ground floor ranging up to second floor. This again is the proposed ground floor plan, showing it a little bit closer up here to give you an idea of the arrangements. So there is existing parking here at the moment, which does serve the existing business. It is proposed to provide residential parking here, along with some business use parking, and to propose new business use parking here within the existing garage unit. The first floor plan, I do have plans closer up of the individual proposed properties. We can see it in more detail. As you can see here at the front, where the main property is that serves the unit, that is the existing office which is to be retained. The proposed office to be lost at first floor level is here. As you can see from this aerial view, a number of the proposed properties would be provided with some outdoor terracing. At second floor level, some of the accommodation would be proposed at second floor. And the proposed roof plan, this really provides you with an idea of some of the roof finishes that is proposed. So looking at closer up of the individual proposed residential dwellings, I've referred to them as units, so units 1 to 5 proposed. This is in the building as you come up the public footpath from West Street on the left. Unit 1 here is a 1-bedroom flat with outdoor terrace. Unit 2, 2-bedroom flat with outdoor terrace. And Unit 3, 2-bedroom flat with outdoor terrace and set over second floor as well. units 4 and 5 here individually at second floor level. This is the proposed elevations for units 1 to 5. You'll note here, outlined in red, is the existing built form. Note that the existing height, although a new mansard roof structure would be proposed to accommodate some flats, the height would retain similar to the existing. A new clay tile roof structure would be proposed over this area, and additional glazing added to above the existing garaging there. And this really provides you with some other views from the side elevations of units 1 to 5. Note the mansard roof structure proposed. This is the floor plans of units 6 to 8, which would be proposed opposite units 1 to 5. This is proposed to convert an existing brick building. Unit 6 would be set over ground and first floor, 2-bedroom flat. Unit 7, again a 2-bedroom flat over ground and first floor. And Unit 8 would be set over 3 floors. Proposed elevations for these units. This is the, you could call it the principal elevation that faces the footpath. This is the proposed building to be converted. From the other side, I've tried to cut out so that you can see the elevation concerned with unit 6 to 8 here. And looking up from the public footpath would be here. Units 9 and 10. At ground floor, again, Unit 9 here, situated actually over 3 floors for Unit 9. Unit 10, access at ground floor, and again situated all at first floor with private terracing. Elevations of Units 9 to 10. The principal elevation here of this proposed building would serve Unit 9, and that will be facing north within the sites. So as you approach the site from Long Garden Walk from the north, as you come through the public footpath, this would be the elevation you'd be facing. And Unit 10 proposed here. This would be from the rear, so from the rear outlook from the remaining properties on West Street which fall outside the site, the view outlook, this is the elevation that it would be facing. And units 11 to 13 would be situated in a replacement building consisting of a terrace of 3 houses. Again, accommodation situated over ground first floor and second floor for unit 13. And the elevations of proposed units 11 to 13. You can see that, again, it's proposed to be the traditional Surrey form, seeking to reflect design and heritage principles within the conservation area. This is a close-up plan of the proposed residential car parking to serve some of the flats, and some parking here would be retained for some of the existing business use, bins and bike storage here. And the proposed business use parking plan to make use of the existing garage as laid out here. This, members, is obviously within a regular site. It's been difficult to try and capture all the proposal. So what the submission includes is a number of 3D visual aids. I've included this one here. You could say taken from the north looking south. This is the proposed replacement building to accommodate units 11 to 13. This is proposed unit 9 and 10 here. And the new mansard roof structure here, and that building to accommodate units 1 to 5 and units 6 to 8. Unfortunately, you can't see them, but just behind here. I do have further visual aids in hard copy if members wish to see them and pass them round. But that just helps give you a bit of visual perspective there on the proposal. So some site photographs. This is a view south from Long Garden Walk outside the site. You'll note here on the left is the Scouts building. Behind here, this is the building to be demolished, proposed for units 11 to 13. Again, just showing some of the existing vehicle access and public footpath surfacing. Moving further south in the site, this is the proposed building to be demolished here to make way for Unit 9, where 10 would adjoin at first floor level. And this is a view northwest at the existing building to make way for Units 11 to 13. And again, looking west, this is the existing garaging, which would be made available for the business use parking, with roof extension above, and which adjoins the building on the left, which you can't see, where the new mansard roof structure is proposed. View south on the public footpath. On the left are the buildings which would be converted to Units 6 to 8. And a view north on the public footpath. On the left here, you can see that is the existing roof structure. That's proposed to be replaced with a mansard roof structure. As I say, the height would remain similar, but it would have a obviously different form and slate roof tiles. Again, just a closer up view of the existing buildings to be converted. And a view of the rear of properties outside of the site. You'll notice it's they serve a number of commercial units which front West Street. The existing units are served by their bin services here. That is proposed to be retained, and the area enhanced to be shared with some of the existing proposed residential units. So members, in terms of the determining issues in this application, the loss of lawful uses, it has been demonstrated in the application that a number of the existing buildings to be demolished or converted are associated storage units with the business use, which have been surplus to their requirements. A small amount of office use would be lost to residential. The density is quite high density, but in its town centre location, officers consider to be suitable. The visual impact, it is within a conservation area. It is currently a site that has you can see a lacking in visual interest with some of the buildings on site. We consider this would enhance the conservation area. We've looked closely at surrounding uses to the site. There are some residential and some commercial. However, it is largely a quiet backland location away from main roads. There are some surrounding listed buildings, and the site itself contains a listed building which fronts West Street, which we've considered. If I can turn your attention now to the update sheet, you'll note that we have now received and secured the appropriate infrastructure contributions which can be justified, and therefore recommendation B can be deleted. We have had a formal response from the Rights of Way officer. Their response is there for you in detail, and our summary below. Having regard to that response, we have added another condition in regards to bollards to the public footpath. So, Chairman, the recommendation remains permission to be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I like your description of something that's plumb ugly. It sounds so much better when you say it. I think we've all looked at this and thought, why the heck didn't they get on and do something with it? Councillor?
No, thank you, Chairman. Page 235 refers to the fact it's in the town centre and the conservation area. It actually refers also to the Farnham Design Statement. It's very difficult to fit in compact dwellings into areas such as this. And I personally like it, and I think actually I'd like to commend the architect. I think he's done a good job personally, and I think it ticks the majority of those boxes too, and it has my full support. Thank you, Chair.
Any other members? Councillor Blagden?
Again, as the ward councillor of this particular area, I think that it's a very good solution to what was previously a bit of a jumble, to be honest. And I think that to the empty offices have now been turned into residential accommodation in the centre of town, complete with all the amenities with it. And I think that's a major step forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Potts?
Sorry,
I've got Councillor Potts, then you, Councillor Frost. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really like the design. I think it's great to see the mix of, new coupled with old and the way that that's been done so sensitively. The fact that, again, it's all adding to making Farnham a much more vibrant town centre. We've seen that with a number of the proposals that have recently come through. It's a shame, yes, to lose office space, but having said that, I think this is a very, very good use and very good proposal. In terms of moving slightly ahead of myself in a way, but if we are minded to pass this proposal before us this evening, again, looking at the conditions, and if I could just ask officers to refer to page 255, going back to the old chestnut from a couple of applications ago, the condition in terms of construction deliveries. Again, we are right in the middle of Farnham Town Centre. Could I ask that, as I say, if we are minded to pass that, could officers look at that condition similar to the way that we did it timing-wise not before 9:15 and something along those lines, Madam Chairman? Thank you.
Good news, Councillor Potts, is that Tim's nodding away there, so that will be a possibility, I take it. Good. Councillor Frost?
Thank you. I think it's nice that we've come up with something for the town centre. However, I think it's too dense. There's 60 dwellings per hectare. And looking at it at the moment, you'll suddenly see these quite high buildings, and I don't think there's enough car parking, because you've still got the premises, the business premises there, as well as all the residential dwellings. So for me, there are two things wrong with it. One is it's too dense at 60 dwellings per hectare, and the other is I don't believe there's enough car parking spaces there. And I can see car parking because you've got 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings, and there will be at least 2 cars per dwelling. And I can see Long Garden Walk and all around that area full of parked cars. So they're my reservations about this, but there we go.
Right, thank you, Councillor Frost. Councillor Williamson and then Councillor Pritchard, and then perhaps we could get to a recommendation.
Thanks very much, Joan. I find myself agreeing with Councillor Frost. I mean, the design is really quite nice. It's very attractive, but it just looks too dense. And in fact, I mean, you said that there wasn't enough car parking space. The thing that horrified me was, in fact, just how many cars there were on that ground floor level, and the effect that will have not only on Long Garden Walk as they all sort of pour out of there, but on the air quality as well. I just think it's too dense.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Pritchard, got a new point?
Well, actually, it's not very new. It's just that I just wanted to know whether there was any visitor parking, because obviously, one car per property is not enough, and obviously you've got family that will be visiting these properties as well, and make it even more dense and clogged up.
No, there isn't any official visitor parking provided for the residential units.
Right, anybody got any new points, or can we move to the recommendation? Unless the officers wish to add anything. Nope. Do you wish to add anything, Elizabeth?
Only to say, Chairman, in relation to parking, members will be aware, particularly returning members, that the council has its own guidelines which are more demanding than the county's own parking guidelines. We went through an exercise pursuant to the NPPF a couple of years ago, and took the opportunity to justify our own parking guidelines on the basis of very high local car ownership. They are proving to be very successful, and we are getting support on appeal, but we've only had 2 good decisions so far. But it won't surprise us if we do come unstuck with them, in that we are actually carving out new ground on this. We're pretty exceptional in having gone down this route. And I think on the back of that, it should be acknowledged that whilst there's a very minor shortfall against these guidelines, they have largely sought to comply with them, which is an advantageous thing in the town centre, in that many developments, as you'll be aware, in the past have come forward with no car parking in the town centre. So whilst there is a concern about car parking, this is very centrally located. It is well served for public transport relative to the rest of the borough, and they are broadly meeting our very high guideline. So I would ask you to take that into account before you actually do dismiss it on grounds of inadequate parking. Thank you.
Thank you, members. So there's various reasons for you to think about this before you make your mind up. I think Emma, for a change... Oh, we've got to add that one. I think Emma's actually going to have to count for this one. Emma says we have actually to vote on the additional condition, or the change to the condition, changing the time. Tim was nodding because I think it's 8 till, if I remember off the top of my head, 8 till 8 or something, isn't it? 8 till 6. And Councillor Potts was suggesting making it later to avoid the rush hour in the town centre.
Was it 9:15 to 5 was the previous one on delivery? Was it deliveries?
Sorry, Madam Chairman. I was suggesting on sort of deliveries and the construction traffic sort of coming in and out with those. It was something like 9:15 till 4:30 or something around those times.
Yes, because the condition's got construction, deliveries and work, so it's got the 2 together. Yeah. It's just getting the time right, isn't it?
I'm not suggesting, obviously, that the works themselves are limited like that. It's the traffic flow. Thank you.
So is this another extra condition? Is it on?
We take deliveries out of 9 and have a separate condition like you did with the previous application, and devise times 9:15 to 4:30 for deliveries in the way that you agreed for the previous condition. That ticks that box. Thank you.
Members happy with that? Are you with us? So condition 9 will take out the construction deliveries will not be in that. That'll be just for the works taking place between 8 and 6. But the deliveries, construction deliveries, will take place between 9:15 and 4:30. Are members happy with that change recommendation or added recommendation? Can I see a vote of support on that one? Those members in favour of that extra?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Those opposed to it? Any abstentions?
1.
So can we now, members, move to the recommendation? So the recommendation, which is on the update sheet, that's subject to conditions 1 to 23, and the extra condition we've just added about construction vehicles, conditions on page 253 to 260, and the informatives 1 to 6, which are on pages 260 to 61, and an extra condition 24, which is on the update sheet. Subject to all of that, permission is granted. Can I see all those in favour of granting permission on that site, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And all those against, please?
1, 2, 3.
And do we have any abstentions? Thank you, members. That completes the business. There are... Oh, sorry, is that agreed?
Yes, that's agreed.
Say that agreed. So there's no items to consider and exempt. Thank you for your patience. Long agenda. It was always going to be so with 3 public speakers, but thank you indeed for keeping it brief, keeping it succinct, and pleasant journey home. Thank you.